A faint winter light falls across a corridor in Windsor Castle, one half illuminated, the other in shadow. It is the kind of corridor that has carried centuries of quiet footsteps, yet today it mirrors a more modern divide, the distance between family affection and institutional caution. It is within this tension that Prince Andrew's story now sits, suspended between a past shaped by privilege and a present shaped by consequence. For decades, he stood close to the ceremonial core of royal life, the Queen's trusted son, a figure folded into the rhythms and rituals of public duty. Yet as the expectations of the monarchy shifted, Andrew found himself moving in the opposite direction, away from visibility and towards an existence defined by careful limits. The man who once thrived in public roles now remains at the edges of an institution working to safeguard its future. For King Charles, the dilemma is both personal and constitutional. He carries the memories of a brother with whom he shared childhood routines and adult responsibilities. But he also carries the weight of a crown that demands prudence, restraint and accountability. Responsibilities sharpened the moment he ascended the throne. Reports suggest that within palace walls, the conversations have been measured, cautious and deeply human. The question remains, how does a monarch balance the protection of a centuries-old institution with the compassion owed to a brother navigating the consequences of his own decisions? As the corridor fades into shadow, one truth settles quietly. Andrew's story is no longer solely his own. It has become part of the broader, more delicate narrative of a monarchy reshaping itself for a new era. There was a time when Prince Andrew's place within the monarchy felt assured, anchored by a sense of purpose that resonated across the country. Archival footage shows him in naval uniform, stepping confidently across the decks of Royal Navy vessels. A young prince defined not by ceremony alone, but by service. His role in the Falklands conflict, widely recognised at the time, shaped an image of a royal who combined duty with action, offering a perspective that felt modern for the institution he represented. In the 1980s and 1990s, Andrew embodied a particular form of royal confidence, outgoing, energetic, and at ease with the demands of public life. International tours, charity engagements, and official visits positioned him as a reliable presence, the kind of figure the monarchy could place before the public with assurance. His connection to military life gave him structure. His charm and accessibility created a bridge between tradition and the evolving expectations of the era. These years mattered not only to the public, but to his family. For King Charles, then navigating his own complex path within a rapidly modernising institution, Andrew's stability offered reassurance. He was fulfilling the role expected of the monarch's second son, visible, helpful, and aligned with the crown's broader responsibilities. But public life rarely remained static. The roles Andrew occupied relied heavily on status, visibility, and the goodwill of a public that expected consistent accountability. As the monarchy shifted towards greater transparency, Andrew's approach began to appear less attuned to the institution's direction of travel. By the early 2000s, subtle changes were emerging. His diary of engagements grew lighter, his public purpose less distinct. Observers noted a growing distance between Andrew and the ethos shaping the modern royal family. What once appeared assured now seemed uncertain. Confidence faded into complacency. Momentum gave way to drift. These early signs did not carry the weight of controversy, but they created space for vulnerability. The strong public identity Andrew relied upon had begun to erode, a slow, quiet weakening that would later complicate the decisions facing both the Queen and, eventually, King Charles. Today, the contrast is striking. The ceremonial garments once worn with ease now rest folded in quiet rooms, reminders of a version of Andrew that once felt central to royal life. The image he held did not shatter in a single moment. It loosened gradually, leaving behind a softer sense of loss and a question about what remains when purpose begins to fade. Before the world reached its turning point, a quieter decline was already unfolding. It did not appear in headlines or public statements. Instead, it took shape within private decisions, shifting priorities, and a lifestyle that increasingly sat at odds with a monarchy aiming to project discipline and accountability. Reports over the years indicated that Andrew's financial landscape had become more complicated than the public realised. Reliance on private benefactors, along with a pattern of expenditures that exceeded what a more modern royal climate encouraged, created a foundation that was less stable than it appeared. While not unlawful, this dependence raised questions about judgment, questions the palace could neither ignore nor easily answer. At the same time, Andrew's network of acquaintances grew broader, reflecting business interests that drifted far from the carefully managed boundaries of royal life. These relationships, some later scrutinised intensely, introduced reputational risks the monarchy struggled to contain. According to officials familiar with the period, the concern was not a single association, but the cumulative effect, a sense of drift, of choices misaligned with the standards expected of a senior royal. Within the palace, this created a dilemma. The Queen's loyalty to her son was unwavering, and her instinct was to shield rather than constrain. Yet the institution around her was increasingly aware that Andrew's public-facing role required greater caution. Charles, still Prince of Wales at the time, recognised the fragility this created, though stepping in carried emotional weight. No single event defined this period. The decline was incremental, almost imperceptible until viewed in retrospect. Letters went unsigned, invitations became fewer, internal discussions grew more frequent. What Andrew saw as independence, others interpreted as unpredictability. And unpredictability, within the structure of the monarchy, is a source of genuine concern. By the time the outside world began asking pointed questions about his associations, the foundations had already weakened. The erosion had happened quietly, aside from public view, but with consequences that would later become unavoidable. The decline was not dramatic, but it was decisive. A slow unravelling, unattended for too long, that left the royal family navigating a problem without easy solutions. One tied to loyalty, public expectation, and the difficult reality that even a prince's position can narrow over time. The decisive moment arrived not through private negotiation or quiet internal review, but through a single televised interview intended to offer clarity. Instead, it became one of the most scrutinised broadcasts in recent royal history. The expectation, both within the palace and beyond, was that Andrew might present a measured account of his past associations and provide reassurance. What followed created the opposite effect. Viewers watched as Andrew attempted to explain, justify and contextualise decisions that had already prompted public concern. Yet the tone, phrasing and overall impression left audiences unsettled. According to commentators at the time, the interview raised more questions than it resolved. The public response was immediate and unequivocal. Trust, already weakened, dropped sharply. Media coverage intensified, while parliamentary figures expressed concern about the impact on national reputation. Behind palace walls, discussions accelerated. An institution built on caution and continuity was suddenly facing a reputational crisis of unusual magnitude. For the Queen, the emotional complexity was profound. Maternal instinct met institutional requirement. Andrew was her son, yet he was also a senior royal whose position now threatened the monarchy's stability. The decision for him to step back from public duties was difficult but necessary, marking the effective end of his working life as a royal. For Charles, then preparing for an eventual transition to the throne, this was a defining moment. The interview revealed the scale of the challenge he would inherit: a brother facing public disapproval and an institution unable to support a return to the roles Andrew once held. What followed was not anger, but acknowledgement, a recognition that the public's confidence had shifted irrevocably. Restoring Andrew's place within the monarchy's working structure was no longer viable. The risk to institutional credibility was simply too great. As the studio lights dimmed and the cameras were dismantled, it became clear that a line had been crossed. The consequences would shape both Andrew's future and the responsibilities awaiting King Charles. In the years since stepping back from public life, Andrew's world has settled into a quieter, more contained existence. Royal Lodge, once a home filled with movement, visitors, and ceremonial preparations, now feels still. His appearances are limited, his engagements non-existent. What remains is a life shaped by routine, privacy, and the careful management of visibility. From the monarchy's perspective, this distance has never been framed as punishment. Instead, it is a protective measure, safeguarding an institution that must project unity, stability, and accountability during a period of transition. With King Charles now leading the crown, the need for reputational clarity has become sharper. Any return by Andrew to public duties would challenge that clarity and risk reopening conversations the palace is keen to let settle. Yet within this context lies a quieter emotional truth. To Charles, Andrew is not merely a constitutional question. He is a brother with whom he has shared decades of family life. That personal connection does not disappear with duty, but it must be managed with discipline. The King's challenge is to maintain compassion without compromising the integrity of the monarchy. Andrew's daughters, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, continue to navigate their own lives within these boundaries. Their affection for their father remains evident, yet they too understand the sensitivities surrounding public association. They occupy spaces adjacent to royal life, careful not to inflame debates that have, over time, settled into reluctant acceptance. Sarah Ferguson's role has been one of consistency. Though no longer married to Andrew, she remains a steady presence, supportive, practical, and conscious of the delicate balance required within the wider family. Her position is understated but quietly impactful, offering Andrew stability as the world beyond Royal Lodge fades further from view. The monarchy moves forward, adjusting to new responsibilities, new pressures, and a new sovereign. Andrew's isolation is not absolute, but it is defined. A prince once central to public life now walks a more solitary path. Still part of the family, yet at a distance shaped by necessity. In the quiet that now surrounds Prince Andrew, a broader lesson emerges about the changing expectations that define modern public life. His journey, once marked by visibility and status, now illustrates the fragile intersection between personal identity and public responsibility. The monarchy, long shaped by tradition, finds itself navigating new pressures that demand transparency, restraint, and moral clarity. For King Charles, the challenge is profoundly human. He must honour the institution he now leads, while carrying the weight of his family's private history. The balance is delicate, compassion on one side, accountability on the other. His approach to Andrew reflects this duality, neither rejection nor reinstatement, but a carefully maintained distance that acknowledges both past decisions and present realities. Andrew's future remains limited, defined by quiet routines and reduced expectations. While he is not exiled, he is no longer central to the institution he once served. His presence has shifted from public figure to private consideration, a reminder of the vulnerabilities contained within royal life. This chapter raises questions not only about consequence, but about continuity. How does a monarchy preserve its humanity while upholding the standards demanded by the public? How does a family reconcile private loyalty with public duty? These are not questions with swift resolutions. In the end, Andrew's story settles into something more subdued, a lasting reminder that royal life offers privilege, but also scrutiny. That consequence can arrive slowly, yet reshape a life entirely, and that the institution endures, even as the individuals within it confront the limits of their choices.